Hello everybody, we're going to do a quick video here to follow up Julia's video that discusses and shows you the spinal cord with vertebrae stacked on top of each other. So let's begin. So this here is a model of the vertebrae all the way from where the skull would attach at the very top down to the pelvis at the bottom. The first thing to draw your attention to is that we have cervical vertebrae, they're highlighted in the blue. We have thoracic vertebrae highlighted in the yellow color, and then it switches down to those lumbar vertebrae again. And at the very bottom, we have the sacrum, which you can see a little bit better from this side. So this structure right down here is the sacrum. Between each of those discs are the vertebral discs. So this is the vertebrae, and these are the vertebral discs made of the fibrocartilage we talked about in our histology segment. You'll notice that the body of each vertebrae are stacked on top of each other. If we look at the posterior, we can see a couple of processes. So Julia introduced you to the transverse process. So there's a transverse process that comes off of each side of the vertebrae. In the case of the thoracic area, there's actually a facet. This is where the rib connects to the vertebrae. There also is a spinous process here, and the most noticeable one is right here. This is C7s, it's called C prominens. You'll notice that as we go down, that the shape of that spinous process starts to curve more and more inferior as we move down into this lumbar region. You'll also notice that the profile changes. When I look at these, I almost see sort of like an anteater or an aardvark shape to it. As I move down lower and it starts to drop down, it starts to remind me a little bit more of a giraffe or maybe an elephant. And then as you get down here into the lumbar area, look how broad that is. That oftentimes reminds me a little bit of a moose, okay? So, spinous process, transverse process. When we have our vertebrae, we have the superior articulating surface and the inferior articulating surface. And this one is a little tricky for students. It has a superior and inferior facet. The inferior facet is the side below the body, and the superior facet is on the next vertebrae on the superior aspect. And so these two interact as a small joint. The other thing that's nice about having the vertebrae in column is that there's a structure that's known as the intervertebral foraminas. You may recall that foramina is a hole. And so right here, with them stacked on top of each other, two vertebrae working together create one intervertebral foramina. And that is the location by which the spinal nerves exit so that the neural information is able to enter into and exit out of the spinal cord by these intervertebral foramina. So there you can see it in great detail. And you can see right next to it, part of that intervertebral foramina is the superior and inferior articulating facets that are where the vertebrae or vertebrae are going to interact with each other. So that kind of gives you a brief idea of the vertebrae as they are stacked on top of each other to sort of build on the anatomy that Julia introduced in your other video.